So June, because I know you very well, could I enlist you as my little sidekick, please? And if anybody does happen to kind of like want to enter the meeting, will you
Join,
just
yeah.
let them in? Or I'll let
Yeah.
Katie in.
Oh, I've already done it.
Have you got it?
And we've
Right,
got
so
somebody else as well.
yeah, oh lovely. There's a few more arriving. That is fantastic. Hi everybody, hi Katie. There's just a little fly joined the session as well there. Right, so what I'm going to do is just make sure I start with my PowerPoint. June's letting people in. Just to let everyone who's just arrived know as well, I am recording the session so that I can send it to you afterwards and so that you've got it to kind of refer back to. But by all means, I know that means you might well want to turn your cameras off, but that's absolutely fine. It's completely up to you. I'm just going to drag my PowerPoint. Actually, it's fine there for now. I do tend to talk to myself a little bit every now and again. I'm hoping that everybody's aware of that already. I know that there's quite a few of you that I know in the room, which is lovely. Thank you so much. So the session today is on conditional formatting. So I hope that's what you're all here for. What you can expect from the session is some demonstrations today to just showcase helpful hints and tips to improve your knowledge of Excel, particularly obviously with regard to conditional formatting today. Feel free to ask questions at any time using the chat, or you can unmute yourself if you feel that you're happy doing that whenever appropriate. And please, just, I'm really sympathetic. I know that IT learning is quite difficult. So if you want me to demo something again, please just ask. It is never, ever a problem. It always takes a couple of times for the demos to kind of like really sink in. And I'm aware that you're probably, maybe making notes as you go along and things like that. I've left 10 minutes dedicated at the end of the session to questions and answers as well. So we do have a little bit of spare time. And I will, at the end of the session, get you to, I'll send you the link so that there's a little training evaluation questionnaire that I like everybody to complete. And I use that to just kind of create a little LinkedIn post to let people know kind of how it had gone. So I really do just ask that that's all you kind of like pay me back for kind of doing the session with a little training evaluation. And last but not least, let's have fun. I like to think that I'm a bit contagious with regard to Excel. I do like to share the enthusiasm and I do have a great sense of humour. So I'm hoping that we can have some fun with the session today. So a couple of objectives. So I want to make sure that we understand what conditional formatting is and how it can help to interpret your data sets. We'll explore some of the different techniques associated with conditional formatting as well, because there's lots and lots of different things that you can do with it. And as you might have hinted, you might have realised in some of my social media posts, I've tried to kind of make it so that there's always something a little bit more than the average. So there's kind of like some really special, kind of more advanced ways of using conditional formatting. And for anybody who's already using it, I've purposefully built that in for you. So there is some golden moments as well. And I also want to talk a little bit about preparational work so that you can really start to consider the steps that will make sure that whatever conditional formatting you're applying is future proofed to make it really easy for any new rows that you might add to an existing data set. If it's like a work in progress, which quite often obviously there are, we'll build that in as well and make sure that you understand the pros and cons. Last but not least, I do like to always mention, let's get in our digital ducks in a row. I'm on a bit of a mission to try and kind of improve that digital divide that exists throughout the country. So first and foremost, what is conditional formatting? And I promise you there's a very, very small amount of slides and a lot of Excel, so bear with me at the moment. So conditional formatting is a feature in Excel that changes the way that cells are displayed if they meet your conditional formatting rules. Basically, it formats cells that meet certain conditions in a prominent way. It provides clever little visual clues on your screen to help you quickly make sense of your data. Now, in practice, what that can really help with is highlighting data patterns automatically. So this means that you can quickly identify trends, you can find those outliers that maybe kind of like within a data set don't look quite right, and you can identify some key insights from your data. It makes your spreadsheets much more visual and easier to interpret than just looking at rows and rows of text or numbers. They've really got a place in places like summary dashboards for data analysis and generating reports as well. So they're a really, really useful tool to start to understand from that aspect. So there are 5 different types of conditional formatting, kind of categories, if you like. So the first one is about highlighting cells rules. So with this one, the kind of like, I've tried to categorize them because you can kind of like look at things in terms of saying, well, is something greater than a specific numerical value, less than a specific numerical value, or between two specific numerical values. But I've also popped the word dates in there because it's important to recognize that dates in Excel are just numbers behind the scenes. So we can definitely apply some conditional formatting to do with greater than, less than, and between to both numbers and dates. Equal to and text that contains are the two main ones that revolve around highlighting text-based information. And then you've got numerous different things that you can do with dates, but everything except between, because that's dealt with in this one that I talked about at the beginning here. So you can have a date occurring next week, last week, tomorrow, yesterday, all sorts of different things that you can do. And then you can identify duplicate values, but comparatively, from a mutually exclusive point of view, you can also choose to highlight just the ones that are completely unique in a data set. The next category is top and bottom rules. So these are very much around numerical information, numerical columns in your data set. So you might, for example, want to highlight the highest top 10 items or the lowest top 10 items. And again, things that are mutually exclusive, they don't combine together, they're completely separate of each other. The top 10%, so this will look at how many rows we've got and it will calculate the 10% of the rows. So these two are similar in effect, but this one's kind of controlling in terms of specific numbers. This one is just going to look at how large your data set is. So if you've got 200 rows, it's going to give you the highest 20 rows because that's 10% of 200. Similarly, you've got your bottom 10% in there as well. And then you've got above average and below average. So again, mutually exclusive. You can highlight ones in green that are good and highlight the ones in red that are poorer. We won't say bad, we'll just say poorer. Data bar is one of my absolute favourite conditional formatting elements. It's a little bit like integrating a chart, a graph, like a bar chart, completely within a column, but without generating the chart itself. It just lives inside the cells. This is amazing, and I've added this in there. You need this in your life. If there's something you take away, get data bars built into an Excel spreadsheet somewhere. They're fantastic. Colour scales, don't like these quite as much, if I'm completely truthful. They're kind of a colour-coded cells, so we're thinking red, amber, green, where the ones that are bad are red, but you can reverse that, so you could kind of low cells might be good in some data sets, in which case you can go green, amber, and then red. But there's some blue in there, there's some green in there, there's kind of red and white and blue and white. There's all sorts of different things that you can do with the colour scales to kind of really highlight data sets. And then icon sets, which I like to describe as similar to colour scales, but a little bit less invasive, to be completely honest. And I like these a lot better than a colour scale. So these exist to create like an icon that can have like red, amber, green, but just as a little icon that sits inside the cell next to the numerical value. You can turn the numerical value off and just have the icon within the one column, but quite often people do leave kind of the text, well, the numbers on there as well. So they're the 5 different main categories. Now, I've also built in some tips and best practices, but if I'm truthful, I think the best thing to do right now is start to apply some of those rules that we've already started to talk about. Now, I'm just going to move my PowerPoint, bear with me, because I'm on 2 screens here. So I'm just going to extend my screen, bear with me, I should have done this at the start. So that I can have my PowerPoint at the top there, out of the way, ultimately, I think is the best way to do it. And then we'll get Excel on the go here. So this is the Excel file. Can everybody see that okay?
I can't see it, Alison.
Can't you? Right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to revert back to that duplicate screen because that will probably fix things. I think it's actually sharing the other screen now that I've
Yeah, I
dragged
can
that
see
over.
it now.
You can see it now. Brilliant. I'll stick with that way. I can't see your chat screen at the moment while I'm presenting Excel, so I will keep popping back so that we can kind of try and make it a bit of engaging and kind of get some kind of questions and answers during the session as well. But if you want to unmute, you can ask a question and I'll be able to hear you, no problem at all. So I've got a data set here already. Now, one of the things that I'm a massive advocate for is I convert every single data set that I use into a table. This data set here has not been converted yet, on purpose, because I want to kind of demo that as well. But because I always think it's useful to sort of look at it from both directions, because sometimes we're using other people's data sets and we daren't kind of convert those to tables for whatever reason. So let's just have a look at this, because what we'll do, we'll have a look at that unique ID column, and I'll zoom in just a little bit so that you can see it a little bit clearer. Now, this unique ID column, what I want to do, you can see I've got a couple of purposefully set up duplicates within this data set. But we don't just apply it to those two values. We want to make sure that this is applied to the entire column. We don't need to apply it to the phrase unique ID. It's just the data underneath the field headings that we're concerned with. So I'm going to use Shift, Control and down arrow to highlight all of that data. It's just a lovely quick way. And it will just keep going till it hits an empty cell. So mine stopped at this particular cell here because the one underneath it is completely blank. So Shift, Control and down arrow to just highlight that information. Now at this point, if my data set was complete, I could go ahead and apply conditional formatting to those cells. But quite often our data sets are on the go. So we are anticipating the idea that we will be adding more to something. So with that in mind, you can hold down Shift and then use your down arrow to just keep selecting cells. This is like using your keyboard as an extension of click and drag with a mouse. Think of it kind of in that sort of way. So if I go Shift and down, and maybe I'll just over egg the pudding until I get to like row 600 or something like that. I was hoping that would happen quicker than it did. I'll go to 500. Because what I would probably recommend is if you're kind of anticipating those additional rows, I would stop at a key round number. I would bear in mind that other columns that you might be applying conditional formatting to as well also stop at that key row at 500 maybe. I mean, you could go all the way down, but what you don't want to do, I mean, you could go further down is what I was meaning, because if I go Shift, Control and down arrow again, my last row is 1,048,576, but I don't recommend that you apply conditional formatting to everything because that's a huge amount of rows. And even though there's no data in them, if you're applying a lot of conditional formatting to other rows, to other columns rather, it's putting extra additional pressure on the memory size of your spreadsheet. So I don't recommend that you go all the way to the very, very end of your worksheet. I've comeuppance myself a little bit there. Let me just get back down to 500. So I'm just recommended that you go to 500. And what you could possibly do is think about, well, I'll apply some borders to these cells so that I can clearly tell that when the borders stop, there's no more conditional formatting in play. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply conditional formatting to this set of cells here. So conditional formatting is on your home tab, bang in the middle of the ribbon here. And there's those 5 different categories that we were talking about during the PowerPoint. So I'm going to choose highlight cells rules, and I'm going to choose duplicate values. And what I want to do is make sure that I'm assigning duplicate values with a particular formatting colour. Now, we can't see the formatting colour yet because we can't see any duplicate values that it might be highlighting, but I'm just going to go with light red fill and dark red text. So if I click OK to this, it will assign it all the way down those cells, including the empty ones, up to row 500. If we just go back to the top so that we can see the 2 duplicate values that I'd forced, you can see that they're immediately highlighting the 2 to draw attention, to highlight visually the ones that disobey that rule. And obviously if somebody in the future added another row in there, but they assigned it row ID number 10, it's going to immediately highlight that and make it visually draw attention. So conditional formatting is brilliant just for that reason alone, just highlighting duplicate values where you know they shouldn't be. But I want to get now to sort of like do that transverse with thinking, how can I convert this to a table? And what does that look like if I'm applying conditional formatting to the table? And how is that future-proofed?
You chew gum every.
So when you're converting to a table, I would recommend that you just click on any of these field headings, just one of them. Don't highlight a cell range. And I'm just going to choose next door to conditional formatting, format as table. And I'm just going to choose one of the colours, Any will do, depending upon, maybe you could kind of make it fit with your branding and things like that. Now then, it's picked up right the way to row 204. It's not recognised that I've got conditional formatting in some empty cells underneath there, because it's tables are only concerned with data. They're not concerned with the empty cells underneath. But my table definitely has headers, so that's everything in row 3's been included. And I would probably at this point just eyeball what I like to call the dancing ants and make sure that they are running around the right cells. Because things that can throw a spanner in the works with regard to this are empty columns in the middle of a data set, massive no-no. Empty rows in the middle of a data set, another no-no. Merged cells, tables and merged cells do not go together at all. So do make sure that you've thought about the preparation elements with regard to tables as well. Now I'm going to click OK. And I'm actually going to use table design, because one of the things I do recommend, so this is a brand new tab that's appeared because we've converted to a table. And I'm going to go over here to the table name so that I can just change this to TBL orders. So just something that makes sense about the data that we've converted to a table. So this is order-based information. The next thing that I'm going to do is apply conditional formatting to this column here for order date. Now, remember the way we did it last time? We used Shift, Control and down arrow. That should still work, but I don't recommend that now. You're not going to need to worry about that now that you've converted to a table, because there's a brand new element associated with tables to make life easier. So I'm going to just zoom into that order date a little bit more. So just above the order date, I'm hovering and my cursor's turning into a black downward headed arrow. If I click now, I'm highlighting all of the data. I'm not highlighting any empty data underneath. I'm just highlighting the data. But the brilliant thing about conditional formatting, well, about tables, is that when we add new rows, the data validation is adopted, the conditional formatting is adopted, the data types are adopted. If you've got any kind of formatting, that's adopted. So this means that it is completely fully future-proof because we've converted it into a table. So I'm going to go back to my home tab, over to conditional formatting, and I am again going to choose highlight cells rules. Now what I want to do is I want to focus on these options within a date occurring. So in here, we've got a little drop down facility as part of this mini dialog box. I'm hoping you guys can see that okay. And I've got lots of different things that I can do that all kind of lend themselves to date-based information. So I could highlight any that have yesterday's date, today's date, maybe there's tomorrow's date on there, in the last 7 days, even moving on to anything for this month or last month or next month. So there's lots of different things that you can do with date-based information. And obviously, all of those elements in that drop-down, they're all individually mutually exclusive, which means you can apply multiple conditions to that one column to do with the date-based information. Now, obviously, if you're layering, because we call it layering the rules, you want to make sure that any formatting elements that you apply are all different, because otherwise there's no point. Because if you've got the same formatting elements, how can you tell what kind of rule it is or what it's kind of highlighting? So I'm going to go ahead and just choose this month. Now I'm going to just choose yellow fill with dark yellow text. So here, just a little bit of an overview of these bits. You've got 6 different options that are kind of the default formatting options within conditional formatting here. And these kind of crop up for loads of different conditional formatting rules. So you can have the light red fill with dark red text, like we did with the duplicate values. You've got the yellow. I wish I could show you what that looked like, but there's no Novembers in view. You can have green, so you've got a bit of a little mini traffic light system thing going on initially there. You've got your red, your yellow, then green. You've got light red fill, which means the background colour of the cell will just be red, but it won't change the font. Then you've got red text, which means the text will go red, not bold, just red, but it won't change the colour of the background cell. Red border between you and the gatepost is an absolute chocolate fire guard. Do not touch it or use it because it doesn't emphasise anything enough, in my opinion. There's just not enough emphasis when something's got a red border. You can go into, as you can see at the bottom there, something called customised format. So customized format will let you do something to the nth degree. You can change the color of the font, you can make it bold, you can make it italics. You can't change the size of the font, but you can change the font. You can even change the data type, you can change the color of the background of the cell, you can change the border, and you can change the colour of the border of the cell. So there's loads of different things that you can do within customised format. I'm going to go just for now, just baby steps, with yellow fill and dark yellow text, and I'll click OK to that. So what we should see now, if I scroll down, I'm definitely sure I did build in some for November. Now, the brilliant thing about this as well is, remember, it's dynamic. So if I'd applied this rule 4 days ago when we were in October, it would make October's yellow. But the second we drift into November, October's will just revert back to what they were before, and now November's will become yellow. Next month, when we get into December, they'll become yellow. So it's constantly looking at every single cell and applying the conditional formatting properties. Okay. I'm just going to pop back and check the chat, see if there's anything that I might have missed. I do apologise if you've got a bit of a kaleidoscope going on there now. This looks great. Okay. Anybody got any questions so far? Is this useful?
Yeah, I'm finding it useful because I only tend to use the top and bottom. So a lot of the others I haven't ever used. So just to see them being demonstrated is brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, June. Everybody else all right?
Yeah, no, we're good.
Excellent, great stuff. Right, I'll crack on. Okay, so the next one that I'm going to take a look at is the sales rep. So with the sales rep, it's text-based information. So we've done a little bit on duplicates, we've done a bit on order date. Let's have a look at how we can apply some conditional formatting to text. So I've used that little downward black-headed arrow again. I'll click there once just to highlight the information underneath, and I'm going to choose conditional formatting. We're still using highlight cells rules, so it's these two. So we've got equal to and text that contains. Now these are the only two that will look at text. Okay, within your data set, these are the only two that will look at text, and they are both very, very similar. Now, equal to is very specific. It's quite a pedantic bit of conditional formatting because it will look, for example, for the word chambers within a data set, within a column, I should say, but it'll only look for that word, and it's looking for that word if it exists in one cell. So actually, equal to Chambers isn't going to pick up anything because in my data set, I've got Luke Chambers, I've got Harry Chambers. So that's not going to work. So therefore, text that contains is really useful to be able to go, actually, these two sales reps are my absolute favourites, and I want to just highlight in green whenever Luke or Harry appear. So I can use this to kind of kill two birds with one stone. I could still apply another rule over the top to ask for Susan to appear in a different colour. And that's completely viable. That will absolutely work. So personally, I tend to stick with using, if I know I want text-based rules, text that contains. So that's how you can kind of really draw attention. And obviously this region one would be potentially a good one to use it on, because you could highlight west in a colour, east in a colour, north in a colour, and south in a colour. 4 different colours, overlapping rules. So that's a great way to just explain how you can approach that from a text-based point of view. Now, I've got quantity column, which you'll notice I've repeated, and I've done it on purpose, just so that I can show you some of the different rules that exist. So looking at the quantity column, so obviously everything in here is numerical. So we're starting to look at some more of what we can do with numerical values. So in highlight cells rules, and if I'm honest with you, these 3 are very, very much of a muchness. So obviously it's a bit of a does what it says on the tin. So we can sort of say, well, can we show me highlight in a certain colour all of the ones that are greater than a specific numerical value? Or can you highlight all of the ones that are less than a specific numerical value? Or can you even just highlight all of the ones that are between? So I'm actually only going to demo one of these because they are so similar in their approach. I'm going to go with less than. So my scenario is that if somebody's ordered less than 20 of something, I actually, 201 I put there. If somebody's ordered less than 20 of something, I'd really like to draw attention to that, because that's quite maybe a low order in our opinion, and we maybe want to target them with some email marketing in the future because they've only ordered a small number of something. So we can draw attention to that. So I'm going to dive into the idea that we might want to use customized format. And with customized format, there's all of those different options, and you'll probably recognize this dialog box. It's one that you get quite often in Excel. So I could perhaps change the data type associated with it. I'm still on the fence as to why you would ever need to change the data type of something depending upon the answer to a rule. So I kind of bypass this. I've very, very rarely used it myself. I can't see its relevance. Whereas with font, I might want to make it bold, and I might want to make it red in colour because it's low. I might even want to go bold and italic and really draw emphasis to it. The other thing that you can do, you can strike through. So you know, if something meets your conditions, you can force it to have a line that goes through it. There's your border type information that you could change. Again, I'm on the fence with that one. I don't think it's particularly, it just doesn't draw enough attention. But fill colour, definitely a great one that you could use, applying a background colour to the cells that meet your rule conditions, so less than 20 in this scenario. And you can see that start to take a shape before I've even clicked OK. Right, so that's those ones. And this makes even more sense if I pop a little sort order. You can see therefore that all the low numbers, I know I've got some with zeros, but it was fake information. All the ones less than 20 are showing in red and italic. So that's really drawing attention to those low numbers. Now, quantity 2. So again, I'll click just above the field heading, and it's just once. If you click twice, you actually get the field heading as well. So just be aware of that when you click in just above the field heading, it's one single click. And then I'm going to go back into conditional formatting. I've exhausted all of these now, I feel. So I'm going to focus on top, bottom rules. And again, this is another category that's lovely and straightforward. We've done a bit of a description with the presentation at the beginning of the session as well. So your top 10 items does what it says on the tin. It'll draw attention to the 10 highest items. So if something's high and that's good, you might want to make that green. So that's going to straight away make them green. And I'll have to scroll all the way to the bottom so that we can see it. There we go. So there should be 10 highest items that have become green. And similarly, I could have chosen top 10%, but again, that does a little bit more maths. So because we've got 200 in our list, that would have highlighted 20. Similarly, bottom 10 items, bottom 10% items, that does exactly the same thing, but from a lowest point of view. Now, one of the things that I think it's worthwhile mentioning is that your undo button will absolutely work. So if you've created a rule, a conditional formatting rule, and you've decided that actually you've made a mistake, one of the things that people get into the habit of doing is thinking, oh, I did that wrong. I'll just go in, I'm being my hypothetical acting self here. I'll just go back in and I'll go into top and bottom rules, and actually it was the 10% that I wanted to apply. Now, this would mean that you are creating a conflict because you've already done top 10 items. So if I now choose top 10%, I'm creating two separate rules that are kind of like very similar and might conflict each other because they're not mutually exclusive. So I would recommend one of two things. Don't be afraid of your undo button, because your undo button absolutely will take you a step back and remove the rule. But I also recommend in conditional formatting, you've got this button that says manage rules. This is a beaut, an absolute beaut. And you'll notice that I'm not bothered about where I click when I choose this, specifically because I've created a table. So if I go into manage rules now, it will automatically show me all of the rules for this particular table. And even just for the sort of 10-15 minutes that we've been talking so far, you can see all of the rules that we've created. Now at this point, you can either edit the existing rule if you realise you've gone wrong, or delete the existing rule and start again, okay? Undo works just as well for kind of deleting the rule, but you can manage those rules to make sure that if you created any kind of conflicts, you're fixing them. I'm not going to go through stop if true because if I'm completely honest with you, it's a little bit iffy. You think that you're applying it and you think it's going to work because basically your rules will be read from top to the bottom, and Excel will get to the bottom and still apply a rule that might conflict another one. So stop if true can be useful, but doesn't always work. And that's why I'm not going through it with you right now today. So in my opinion, and I'm just going to pop back to encourage people to let me know, are you okay if I bypass some of these because they are a bit of a like a run seal? They'll do what they'll say on the tin kind of thing.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, they're lovely and straightforward. I do love above average and below average because they're just like you're going to highlight every single cell in a data set. And the exciting thing about that is I'm geeking. Is that you don't need to calculate the average anywhere. Excel doesn't need to know what it is. It'll figure it out itself behind the scenes as part of that conditional formatting rule. So it's not waiting for you to click on a cell and say, this is the average Excel. Just highlight the ones that are above it. Excel will do all that hard work for you without you needing to tell it anything. So you could make green the ones that are above average and red the ones that are below within one column. The other thing I'll probably point out right now is that, as you can see already, like it starts to get really colourful if you're applying a lot of rules. And I want you to be aware that with conditional formatting, less is most definitely more. Because the more rules you have on one worksheet, the harder it is to understand what on earth is going on. If you get to the point where you need to create a spreadsheet to describe what's going on, you've got too many on the go. Okay, so just bear that in mind that it's just go less is more and just highlight the key information that's going to help you interpret the data. Now I'm going to move on to net sales. So with net sales, I'm just going to highlight net sales. Now the three that we've got to cover, other than some advanced bits and pieces that I've built into the session, are data bars, colour scales and icon sets. Now, I'm a massive fan of data bars, so I'm going to leave the best till last. It is one of my absolute favourites. But I'm going to use colour scales here, and I'm going to sort of try and explain why I don't like it. Now, the easiest way to sort of show you is just to apply this green, yellow, red. Now, this first option focuses on green being good, okay? So if those numbers are high, Excel will interpret that as good. If you want the reverse, if the high numbers are bad, you can go red, amber, green. So you can do it in reverse order, but you can edit your rule. You can fix all of that in edit rules, manage rules as well. So I'll go for this first one, which focuses on high numbers being good. Now, straight away, you can see that it's thrown loads of background colours all the way through this column. Now, I think that's too much. I find this quite uneasy on the eye. I'm going to put it in smallest to largest order so that we can really get a gauge on what's happening. So what Excel does is it focuses on the red being the poor cells. It will find the average for you in the background, and it will assume that the average needs to be like a yellowy colour. Now, I happen to know that it's round about 6,000, something like that, which is weird because they're starting to go green already. So this is round about the middle. So although it looks like it's a little bit higher, it's a little bit confusing. But when it gets to the round about the average or the 50th percentile, probably, it will make it a nice strong yellow colour. And then it'll start to shade that and blend that into a strong green. And the strongest green you'll find, obviously, on the highest value. My calibration's just gone a little bit off. Just bear with me a second. There we go. That's better. So we can see, therefore, that this is like a traffic light system, a green, amber, red. I think it's a little bit invasive. I'm not a massive fan of it. What I prefer instead then is icon sets. So your icon sets are similar, green, amber, red, but they just throw a little icon on the screen next to the number, not quite as invasive as having a strong background colour to the cell. And then eventually I'll get into the middle third. So this is more thirds than finding the average. Splits into red, amber, and then your highest kind of top third, they're all going to have the green arrow. So I think that's a little bit easier. Does everybody, am I like alone on this, or do you see it too? It can be a little bit much. Just pop back in case anybody used the chat.
No, I agree with what you're saying there, Alison.
Yeah, do you know where I'm coming from?
Data. Yeah, there's too much data and too much variation in, is it green, is it yellow, is it orange, is it red, is it where, yeah, it's a bit more
sometimes I look at it and I'm like, does it mean? And then especially once you've not got it in alphabetical order, if you can imagine, like when they're not in alphabetical order, it is like really like all over the place for the eye. I just find it too much. Right,
Yeah.
so I've saved the best till last for gross sales. So I'm going to highlight gross sales, use conditional formatting, and then I've got, oh, data bars it is that I'm doing. So your data bars, you've got 12 choices, but I can let you know that they are all exactly the same. They do exactly the same thing. All you're choosing is a colour. Ultimately, that's the whole point of those 12 different options. So I'm just going to go for this colour here. The gradient ones always look quite pretty. So I'll go for this gradient option. And you can see it's just, and actually if I make this wider, those data bars honour the size. So that's quite clever. And obviously you could put those to the left if you wanted them to sort of sit near the bar. I prefer it to the right where I can really see that information clearly. And if I put this into alphabetical order, it's really easy to see exactly what's happened. So you've got your lower values taking up less room as far as kind of a chart within a cell is concerned. And then when it gets to the really high numbers, it's taking up the full size of the cell. I love, love, love data bars. They're one of my favourite things to use as far as conditional formatting is concerned. Right, I'm just going to I think everybody's okay. Any questions or anything so far before I dive into some clever little intermediate advanced ways to use it? I'm going to take that as a we're all good, Alison, you carry on. Right, so I've set something up here. So I'm using a new data set here, and it's kind of a task-based idea that we've designed various tasks associated with one huge project. We've got various different people assigned to the tasks, start dates, due dates. The status in particular is the one that I want to focus on. So what I've done here is I've already applied a little bit of conditional formatting. I do put that orange is quite invasive by itself. I probably should have gone for a more neutral orangey shade than the one I've used. All of these rows that are completed are purposefully set up to appear in green, and that uses conditional formatting. In the same way that we talked about north, south, east, west appearing in different colours, this is exactly what I'm doing, but instead of just one column taking the colour on, I've made it so that the entire row takes the colour on. So we've got completed in green because that's done, it's good. We've got the ones that are in progress in an orangey colour, and the one that I want to assign is not started. So the not started ones, it makes sense they're going to appear in a red colour. Now, for this to work, we need to highlight the whole table. I've already converted this to a table. I can tell that because I've got this table design that's appeared at the top right here. So I'm going to use Control and A. Control and A is a brilliant way to just highlight an entire data set, perfectly created for tables, because you'll notice it hasn't highlighted my field headings because I don't want it to. If I went Control and A once more, I'd get them, but I don't need them for conditional formatting because I'm not applying them to, I'm never going to get the word not started appear up there in that row. So I don't need to apply it to my field heading row. So we've gone Control and A. I'm going to go into conditional formatting, and I'm going to bypass all of these 5 options, and I'm going to choose a new rule because there's something here that we haven't yet explored. Now, all of these options that you can see at the top, they actually make use of the 5 categories that we've been using so far, but this 6th one is brand new. So what you can do is you can actually use a formula to determine which cells you want to format. And I'm just going to move that to the side. Actually, it can go there. Now, it's a little bit weird the way that this one works, and bear with me if you've not used absolute cell referencing before, because we're about to see some dollar signs appearing before letters and numbers, and that might not be something that you're fully familiar with, but bear with me, I'm going to take this step by step. Now, what we want is to highlight an entire row, which is why we highlighted the full table, where that cell, because we do need to start at the top. I'm not going to just click on that cell just because it says not started. I'm going to start at the top with my conditional formatting rule, because remember, it's dynamic. It's linked to all of the cells all of the time. So I need to kind of treat it as if hypothetically that might say something else. It's variable. So if that cell equals the phrase completed. And you'll notice that I put the word completed in speech marks because with text strings and formulas in Excel, you need to capture any text with speech marks around it. So if G3 equals completed, but the problem is it's not just G3 that I want to apply, I want it to pick up, it's everything in G. And so a $ represents absolute. So in that instance, it's the G that's fine. I can keep the $ on the G, but I need to remove the $ from the 3 so that it picks up 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right down to whatever it is for the last one. So I've got equals G3, but with just the $ before the G, equals completed with speech marks. Now, I need to make sure that I assign a formatting element. So I'm going to click on the format button. And I just want to maybe make it go, I did say red, didn't I? Oh, actually, it's the background colour. Sorry, background colour. So it's fill that I do need. We'll make it red. And it actually, maybe black might be a bit hard to read on the red. So we might also change the font so that the font is white on that red background. It's only going to change the ones that say completed. It's not going to change the others at all. Now I'm going to click OK. I should see a little example. I probably should make it bold, actually, just looking at that, because that's not fully readable if I'm completely truthful. That's just going to make it a little bit more prominent on that red background. And now I'm going to click OK. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Definitely, that's great. What did I do wrong there? Bear with me 1 second while I panic slightly and try and figure it out. Did I type the wrong word in? Something weird's gone on with that there. Let's have a look. That should just say G3. And then, okay, that definitely completed. That looks better. Something went terribly wrong. I meant to use the word not started. Please ignore me. It should have been used the word not started. I've got completely confused and done it on completed, but you get the idea. So that's a great way to just kind of highlight an entire row rather than just one thing. Now then, I've got 5 minutes left to do a little bit more on one more advanced element because this is a similar sort of approach. But what I want here is to, rather than highlight all of them, I maybe just want to draw attention to the ones that have high priority. Maybe I want to make them bold and italics. I'm not going to choose a colour this time. I'm just going to make sure that they go bold and italics. And maybe I might want to dip into my data validation options I've built in here to say, actually, it's the medium ones that I want to draw attention to now. And then maybe I want to change my mind and draw attention to the low ones. So this is a lot more dynamic. This is actually making use of a cell on the screen to be able to go, whatever that says, make them bold and italics. So again, it's a similar approach to be able to go Control and A, because you want it to appear to the entire row, and then conditional formatting, a brand new rule, use a formula. Okay, so what we want this time is where priority, because obviously that's all to do with priority, where that cell equals that cell. But remember, the problem we've got is at the minute it's looking at H4 and it's got the $ on both the H and the 4, and it's not the number that we need to apply it to. So it's just the $ needs to stay before the letter, but not the number. This bit here where it mentions H1 and it's got the $ on both the letter and the number, that's fine. That I want it to constantly look at that cell so that can remain fully absoluted, if that makes sense. And then I'm going to choose format, bold and italics. That'll do. And then I'll click OK. OK again to finish the rule. And so, there's something weird going on. There's gremlins in this today. What have I done wrong? Honestly, this worked when I did it earlier. I'm so frustrated. It's not H1. Why have I put H1 there? That should be H4. where H4 equals H1. That's better. That is so strange. So now we can see it's highlighting the entire row for the lows. And if I change that to highlight the entire row for the highs, I can just draw attention to them. Admittedly, this approach is not dissimilar to being able to use a filter and say, well, actually, just show me the highs. I do get quite a lot of learners that say that they prefer to do that than actually use conditional formatting to draw attention to them. But it's worthwhile knowing that you've got different methods. You might want to leave the others on the screen, but just make certain ones a certain colour. You could even assign it to certain people. So I might want to emphasise the ones that are Sam's and then emphasise the ones that are Morgan's. So there's different things that you can do. Now, how's everybody doing? I've got one left to show you, but I'm just going to come back and make sure I haven't bored anybody senseless or overwhelmed anybody. Is everybody okay?
Yeah, everything's fine.
Yeah, June, was that a bit more kind of, you mentioned, hadn't you, that you'd used to applying it to kind of like top bottom rules. It's interesting to see what you can do.
So much more now that you can do with it, and I'm really looking forward now to sharing that with my learners to show them how much more there is to conditional formatting that I didn't realise.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, lovely. Is everybody else all right?
Yeah, good.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Francis. Right, so my last one, but the one that I absolutely adore, is it's a training scenario. So I've made some fake data up. We've got a department job title, and then we've got some kind of training that they've been on in the past. Okay, now what we've done with that is we've got the date that they took the training. We've also built in some clever X lookups to sort of say, well, how often should that be taken? Like in terms of frequency. So obviously if this says 12, I've got some that say 24 and some that say 48. That means it should be taken every year. Now this works best in terms of frequency being set to months, because next due can use something called an eDate function, which will basically add 12 months onto the last day they took that particular training element. So it's a fantastic function in its own right. I'm not going to work through it, I don't think, unless I have time at the end. Then what I've done is I've been able to sort of say, well, okay, if that's when it's due next, how many days is that until that gets here? So what this does is it says, take that next due date that you've calculated and take away today's date, because remember, dates are just numbers behind the scenes. The 1st of January 1900 is number 1, and then the 2nd of Jan is number 2. By now, in 2025, we're on to 45,000 and something in terms of numbers behind the scenes. So that's why you can work out the difference between what's today's date versus when is that when's that training due to be taken. So I can see some values here where it's saying this is massively overdue. I've got some in 2026 where it's not due at all. Now, this scenario needs to kind of have some parameters in mind to be able to go, well, if I'm thinking of icon sets here, because that's what my plan is, I should have mentioned that at the beginning. If I'm thinking of having an icon set that sort of says, well, if it's about 2 months before that training's due, I'd love that to be amber, because amber means I should be booking something on. I should be being proactive and encouraging that staff member to book his training. If it's massively overdue, then it should be red. We should be in panic mode, okay? We should be kind of going, oh, well, why isn't that person been on that training? Massive panic mode. Whereas green is like, we can go to the pub. Nobody needs to worry about that particular training. Everything's fine. We won't worry. We'll have a green icon for good luck. So that's my approach with days until due. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that data set, because it's going to revolve around how many days before something's overdue, nearly due, or not due at all. They're my parameters. So I know, therefore, if I've got 2 months, that's my oranges. Anything more than that is going to be red, and everything else is green. So with conditional formatting, I'm immediately going to assign an icon set, which is green, amber, red. Now it will do a weird thing. It won't do exactly what we want, because we do need to manage that rule. We're going to go back in and manage that rule, and I'm going to edit that rule, because at the moment it's doing something with percentages, which isn't what I want it to do at all. I don't need it to do any percentile calculations or percent calculations. I want it to look at the actual number that sits in that cell, that minus 1740. Same for this parameter, that needs to look at the number that sits inside the cell. Now, I've written down my parameters, and I always recommend that you've got them written down somewhere. Don't try and do it off the top of your head because it's a little bit hairy. So basically, if something's 60 days, greater than 60 days, that can stay green. We don't need to worry about those ones that are more than 60 days until something's due. Whereas with this one, and you'll see that change there automatically to be able to pick up the fact that I'd put a 60 here. This now knows that it's between 60, so less than 60, and actually 0, because this is my 2-month group. This is my ones that are due in the next couple of months. And then what should happen is anything that's less than 0, they're my negatives, they're overdue, they're panic now mode, okay? So if I click OK to that, I should see, and I'll put it in alphabetical order, and I'll just hope this one doesn't be silly with me because I know the others have. So clearly they're all massively overdue. So I've got my red icon for those ones. And then further down, eventually, it's quite a big data set, I should start to fit into the 60 to 0 mark. So yes, this one's due in the next couple of days. Oh, yeah, that makes sense because these are panic, these are overdue. Whereas these ones, they've hit that phase where we need to be proactive and get them booked in. But then anything that's further into the future, they are absolutely green. And the other thing that you can do, this is my last little bit, is with those rules, you can edit the rule and kind of go, well, just show me the icon. That's all I need to see. And the icon will stay put, but the numbers will disappear. And you can actually make use of those icons if you wanted to like filter or sort by them. More likely that you would want to filter and say, just show me the reds. And then you can mail merge out to those people and let them know based on the ones that are red here. It's clever stuff. Right, I finished everything that I wanted to go through. I'm just going to nip back into my PowerPoint. So there is some tips and best practices there. Avoid too many things all on one screen. Use formatting to guide the reader. It's important not to distract them. You know, they need to be able to understand what's going on. Combine with formulas for advanced rules, like I've just shown you in the last couple of scenarios. Test the rules out. Now, I'm not a massive fan of this. I prefer to apply it to the entire column and then kind of check it and edit it if it's not quite right. Brilliant for key performance indicators and summary dashboards to spot problems quickly. Prep work we've talked about when I was doing the little demo. I do like having one spare row. I forgot to mention that. If you've got that one spare row at least above your table, it makes it really easy for that downward pointed black-headed arrow to appear. If you've got no spare row, you'll end up veering into the letter at the top of your worksheets, which makes it highlight the entire column anyway. So keep one spare row above your table. We've gone through how to apply conditional formatting. I think I'm just going to bypass this a little bit because I'm aware that we're running out of time. But if anybody wanted to use that QR code there to kind of connect with me on LinkedIn, that's where I tend to pop most of my little mini video tutorials, promote any kind of bits and pieces that I'm involved in coming up. So feel free to connect with me. I'm more than happy. And the next thing I'm going to do before I let you go is I'm just going to grab the link to the training evaluation so that I can encourage you to complete that. I promise it only takes a couple of minutes and it's really useful for me because I really want to kind of learn from these sessions and improve everything that I'm doing. Right, is everybody okay if I just grab that link for you? Let me know if you need me to go back to that LinkedIn QR code. Right. So Lottie's just typing something. I'm excited. There's a QR code there. Not a QR code, sorry. There is a link to the evaluation. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen because I don't think that I need to anymore. I always hang about for about 10 minutes after the session if anybody wanted to stay on and take advantage. or ask any questions individually about training in the future or anything, thank you, Lottie. Thank you so much. Grab that training evaluation for me though.
I've got to dash, but I'll get that
Yeah.
valuation filled in now for you, Alison, and I'll catch up with you later. Thank you. It was
June.
amazing. I got a lot out of that. Thank you.
Thank you, lovely.
Bye.
Bye. Right, I'll stop recording the session as well.